This is a disclaimer. The views, information, or opinions expressed in the Chai and Shield podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent accurate information. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. This podcast series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. You may not cut, edit, or redistribute this podcast without the expressed approval of the Chai and Shield podcast team. The developers of the Chai and Shield podcast assume no liability for any activities in connection with this podcast or for use of this podcast in connection with any other website, computer, or device. Thank you. And if you like our content, please make sure to like this video and subscribe.
Hello guys, welcome back to another Chai and Shield podcast. I'm your host, Danial. Today I'm with Abraham, Dr. Hashim Mumtaz, Waleed, and Moeen Khan. So guys, let's get into this. So our topic today is on coronavirus and kind of a reflection of what's been going on with coronavirus and how is it gonna end up type of thing. Waleed, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just thinking about what's on everyone's mind right now, and it's obviously, when does everyone think that this pandemic is going to be over? It's been almost a year. March is about to start soon. So let's just go around and ask everyone.
Yeah, so from what I've heard and from what I understand, we'll get a better gauge of this pandemic, especially in the up and coming months with further vaccination and with, of course, the number of infection rates going down. They're expecting, hopefully, that by the end of this year, the virus can be under control, especially in first world countries like the United States.
Well, I recently read an article on CNN that it had a video from a Yale infectious disease expert, and he was mentioning in that, I can send you the link if you want, but he was mentioning in that there's going to be sort of phases to this whole process. And, with the vaccines coming out, obviously, this current vaccine has been, I think, probably the fastest vaccine that has been made. I believe before it was the measles vaccine, which took 4 years. And we've made some pretty great progress this year. But there's still going to have to be phases where he mentioned in particular, I think 2024, where things are fully normal is the year. But he said in between then, right now, we're still in that lockdown sort of phase. But he said in between then, you're going to have these phases where things are going to be partially closed for a little bit, then reopen, and then there's going to be a transition sort of phase. And fully normal, he said, would probably be 2024. So I found that kind of interesting.
So guys, this is Hashim. So first of all, it's good to be with you guys and talking about something that is very, very important for not only just all of us, but the greater society around us. I think it's a very important question. I don't want to trivialize its importance by saying that it is completely unknown what the future holds for us. At this point, as some of you guys mentioned, that our case counts are down and they're continuing to go down. And we have a couple of great vaccines and, a couple of vaccines that are really fantastic. However, their efficacy may not be counted in the 90s, at least during their clinical trials. So there's a lot of hope in the future. And I mean, just a little comment, I don't think that the case counts going down right now has much to do with the vaccines. The only people in the communities that are vaccinated to this point are the elderly and the people associated with the healthcare right now. So we will start to see the full effect of the vaccines probably around, summer or perhaps even fall. However, I think the bigger concern, as the elephant in the room that we are probably going to talk a lot about, would be the variants. So particularly the two that we know, the South African variant and the so-called United Kingdom variants. And I'll try to avoid some medical jargons here because I understand there's a lot of people that may not be interested in a lot of jargons in the B117 and 1351 sort of terminology. And, of course, because COVID was so far prevalent, every nook and cranny of our country, we probably have a bunch of variants of our own. Sadly enough, we haven't done enough mutation analysis or genetic testing on our patients to find some of these variants, but we just heard about a scary one coming from New York. So there's so much that is unknown that is out there.
I think that's part of the problem here, is that we don't know our effectiveness, especially of the vaccines against some of these variants. So it really makes it hard to answer that particular question without kind of seeing what happens over the next few months, for sure.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to come back to the main premise of the question of when will this be over. So there's several layers of this question. So, there is this physical aspect, of course, you look at the case counts and you can kind of go crazy looking at the case counts, and you kind of get lost in the trends. And then there is the psychological effect of when this is over. It's like people have had just too much fatigue watching those numbers and stuff. And, for a common person out there, once they get vaccinated with 2 shots of Moderna or Pfizer or whatever suits your need, I think for you can consider that the worst part of it is over, at least.
Okay, so why is the US particularly, we are this first world country, why are we struggling so much with this coronavirus?
Well, currently, I think a lot of it has to do with the ideology of just freedom of your actions. This is Moeen, by the way, in case you didn't know. But a lot of the times, like I'm currently right now living with my sister in Texas, and a lot of people here, like we were just walking around outside, most of the people aren't wearing masks. And a lot of people here, they value like freedom over everything else. And they believe that the government shouldn't be able to mandate what they have to do in their lives. And they frequently like fight against this kind of idea of being told what to do, even if it's the right thing to do. And I think that's a big factor that's playing a role, and especially in the southern states where they value like states' rights and exactly all that sort of stuff. I think that plays a big factor in why this isn't over and why we keep getting these resurgences of cases in a lot of these states, especially southern states, and even in northern states nowadays. That's happening too. In the big cities, people are starting to get fed up with this lockdown system, and they're just sort of ignoring the warnings that the government is giving and the CDC is giving, and they are focusing, it's kind of selfish, but they're focusing more on what they want to do rather than on what is the best for everyone else. Whereas in a country like China, they have no central freedom. So when that first outbreak happened in Wuhan, they literally locked down the city. They shut the bridges. They didn't let anyone leave. I was reading reports where they were sealing people into their homes who were leaving. They would weld their doors shut, send them food through like a little hole in the door, and then they would keep them in there for a month. So I think that it just it is a factor, and I think that just the way our democracy is set up, it's very hard to find a balance.
And I think there's a lot of opinions going around there. It's a large country in and of itself, and it's not something that's going to go. It's not something that's going to leave overnight. This pandemic has affected many countries around the world. The case counting, even here in the United States, isn't 100% accurate, and the case counting is worse in other countries across the globe. So I think it's important to understand that, yes, we need to educate our people to understand that social distancing and mask wearing is very important, and in fact is the best thing that we can do outside of vaccinations. And even with vaccinations, they're in the 90s, right? Like 94, 95% protective. That doesn't mean you're 100% protective. So I think it's very important that we educate our people. And I think it's important that our medical staff, local medical staff gets involved and informs patients as well. Because often it's easy to listen to the TV or listen to a particular political viewpoint and not really get the message. But when you hear it from a personal healthcare provider that you've known for many years, I think it really makes a difference.
Really, quite a few profound points that you guys have made. And I don't disagree. However, I do want to pick up on something that Moeen said about people in his home state of Texas. And this is the Americanness that we don't take authority. And, I think it started right from, if you go back to the Revolutionary War of when we dumped all that tea in the sea, and we just refused to pay taxes. And this is what this nation was founded on. However, we've moved, a long way from that. I mean, we've gone through several eras and, changes in civil war and whatnot. And of course, this is the 21st century. However, the nation's attitude does define, certain things. But I did want to make a quick point. I want to come to the defense of some of the simple-minded people that may be listening to this, and it's not entirely their fault. I think we did a lot of, going back and forth on like, don't wear masks, leave it for the healthcare professionals. Oh, now wear masks or put your, face behind a cloth cover or whatever you can get your hands onto. And then we quickly went on to a complete lockdown, which is hard to sustain that kind of lifestyle. So we were ill prepared. We had dissolved and got rid of all the resources we had in the government to fight a pandemic X as the warnings were coming from WHO. And then we totally undermined the legitimacy of WHO or an organization that could work at an international level. We first were in denial that there is going to be a pandemic until it hit us. And when we started to fall down in large numbers, initially in Northeast, mostly in New York, that's when we started to panic and we threw the whole country down into a lockdown. So there's been a lot of dilly-dallying and, sort of giving people mixed messages. So I don't know, people got the right message from the beginning, and that sort of messed up in their ability to trust the government or even the healthcare professionals for that matter.
I mean, Waleed, I know that you have some family members in Australia. So, and I know the Australian government did things slightly differently. If you want to, give us some insight on that.
Yeah, so Australia is like another first world country that's not much different from the United States. And so I do have a lot of my family living in Australia, in the Sydney area. And something that I found interesting is that Australia was very successful at containing the virus so far. I think as a nation, they have less than 50 cases total as of now. And what my cousins described was essentially what the way their lockdown occurred was, so if a person possibly got the virus or was exposed to the virus, their whole neighborhood would be locked down for at least 14 days. And that whole neighborhood would be receiving supplies and everything from the government. And I don't think the United States has done anything like that. So that might be the determining factor in why the virus has spread so much here and how other nations were able to contain it so well.
And let's not forget, Australia is that nation that bought back people's guns and burned them down. And that's not happening in this country at all.
So as of right now, we have to deal with what we have. So in terms of face coverings, I've done some research on this as well. People have the big three face coverings. You got your typical mask, you got your neck gaiters, and then you got your bandanas. Bandanas have been at not trendy. They've kind of been dead lately. So, they were garbage in the first place. I was reading studies. So if you have no mask, obviously you have around a high 75% to 100% chance of giving off droplets from, because it's a droplet virus. After that, you got bandanas around a 95% droplet rate all the way down to 60%. So the bandanas are working. but they're clearly not doing enough. And then now we're going all the way to the surgical and N95 masks and all those high grade masks, and we're around really low, like 5% chance of dropping nasal droplets being spread. I think US Today coined it around 95% effective, which is really good. So now you have your neck gaiters, which they didn't actually test in this study, but personally, I would think that the neck gaiters are slightly better than the actual like bandanas, but I don't think they're as good as a face mask. Someone can chime in here as well.
Well, I just want to make the point that I think it's important as to how you wear the mask. Because oftentimes, I go out and I see people that, aren't wearing the mask correctly, which is to cover not only your mouth, but to cover your nose as well. And people also need to understand that the importance of the mask is because the primary way that this virus is spreading is through respiratory droplets. So I think those 2 points are important and relevant to this current topic that we're talking about.
And you mentioned, the different effectiveness of each type of mask, and it's important. Like I understand, like some like bandanas, for example, are not as effective as a surgical mask or like an N95 mask even. But if you're meeting with someone, if one person has a mask on, then there's maybe a 5% chance of it spreading to you. But if both people are wearing the mask at the same time and they're wearing it properly, the transmission rate is, I would imagine, much, much lower. So it is important that not just one person in your room or wherever you're going is wearing a mask. And that's why it's so important that every clothing department store you go to, every mall, even in the grocery stores, everyone's required to wear masks. Obviously, the big issue is people are trying to protest even this now. I've seen videos where people are wearing mesh masks or they're just not covering their nose. But even a simple, I'd be fine with people even wearing bandanas as long as everyone was covering their face properly and wearing it. The transmission would be much less than what it is if even one person is not wearing a mask.
Yeah, and going off of what Moeen said, I think it's important that we have some consistency with it, that you are wearing the mask and you're consistently wearing the mask.
I totally agree with some of the points made, and particularly the last point by Abraham. The best mask is the one that you keep on most of the time. You can get the best medical grade mask with, purified air power, respirators or the PAPRs. I actually ended up investing in a $200 microclimate. And you can, this thing is, I'm not making it up. It just filters out things right down to the lowest micron number that you can think of. However, it's pretty cool looking too. It looks like, something from outer space. But I kid you not, have not used it once. What happened was that their delivery was delayed and I ended up getting vaccinated. And now I feel, well, yes, I need to wear a mask, but I don't need to look like I belong to the outer space. So end of the day, it's whatever it is. Of course, not the mesh thing, but that's just a statement of saying that, hey, I'm not going to be compliant with whatever you tell me. The idea is to realize that it's important for you, it's important for people around you to protect them. And just any mask that you can wear. Yes, you can double mask, you can put goggles on, you can do this and that, you can put a screen on your face, keep your distance, which obviously is a separate issue than the face covering. But end of the day, whatever you can keep on consistently, I think that consistency is the key.
All right, so kind of moving away from that whole mask topic, the vaccines are coming out now. And I have talked to some people, I've talked to classmates, I've talked to other people that have been working in the hospital facility. So one day I walk up to this guy and I was like, yo, what's up, bro? How's it going? He was like, oh, hi, how's it going? And I knew he worked at the hospital. So I looked at him and I was like, yo, you took your vaccine, right? Yeah, I mean, you got it offered to you. And he goes, nah, I don't trust it. And you always hear this phrase from everyone. Nah, I don't trust it. And I feel like people are just worried because they believe something will happen to them 10 years down the line. That's like the excuse that they're using. So is there any worry to be taking this vaccination as of right now? And if you got the vaccination, how safe are you from the virus?
So I feel like being the doctor here, this one's squarely on me. Yes, I did get the Pfizer vaccine. I got both shots. I got my first shot around 17th of December, and the second shot was around 6th or 7th January. I mean, I had a pretty bad reaction to the second shot, to be honest. However, I knew that kind of meant that it's doing what it's meant to do to my body, that is to produce the immunity. These mRNA vaccines this is the first time we are using it in a real life scenario. They've been working on this technology for different things. I think it started out for cancer treatments, and then the BioNTech company founded by Dr. Ugur Sahin, who's a Turkish immigrant to Germany and founded this company with his wife, actually was working on this technology. And then when the COVID came around, he really believed that this was the pandemic that was gonna spread out and be a pandemic in the first place. So he was already working on the vaccine technology. Moderna, who was in the business of making mRNA vaccines and had some experience with it, also started to work on the same deal. So has the vaccine been rushed? Yes, it has been rushed, and for a good reason, I would say. Have they compromised core principles of vaccine safety? Absolutely not. They've gone through the same safety protocols of let's do animal testing first, then it moves on after safety has been established, to phase 1 clinical trials, which is all about safety of the vaccine. And, then the phase 2 and the phase 3 in which they enroll a very large amount of population. So it has been tested. And I will tell you that no responsible company at that level is going to fake their findings or to hide major untoward side effects and things like that. And I mean, it sounds complicated. Oh, messenger RNA, but all it's doing is sending a piece of message in your body and training your cells to produce that protein that will produce an immune response. And in the past, we've injected the proteins through different vehicles. So yes, it is a different and a new technology. However, you can't call it cheating, right? I mean, I can send you 10,000 copies of a document loaded in a big truck, or I can send you an email of a Word document that you can make copies at your own facility. Is that cheating? I don't think so. So yeah, I mean, the great unknown of yes, these vaccines have not been tried in a real life scenario. That worry is there, but somebody had to try it out. So being a healthcare professional, I raised my hand and said, hey, you know what? Give it to me. Something happens to me, we'll see. So I want to be the first person to experience this, and not just for the sake of proving to the world that, and I have no stakes in it. I mean, I don't have any, I'm not a shareholder at Pfizer or Moderna or anything like that, but just so people can understand and have some trust in it that we are the ones taking it because we feel the insecurity of getting this horrible disease. And so we want to have protection against it. And how we see it in the clinical trials, we believe that this medicine, this vaccine, I apologize, is not only safe, but is very, very effective in preventing disease in the first place. And if the chances of disease was still going to be there, the chances of severe disease that could prove to be fatal was going to be almost zero. And so, you don't get to see that with any other vaccines. Just final point before I move on to some of you guys to express your opinion on and talk about what are some of the concerns that people may have in taking the vaccine. The efficacy of the flu vaccine, and we've all been there where everybody told us you must get the flu shot, right? And guess what is the efficacy of the flu shot in the last 5 years? 34%, compared to 95% for this vaccine. And so this is the level of effectiveness that we are hoping to get, and we have already seen that in the limited real life data that we have. So I'm going to ask the question of like, why would you not want to take benefit from something that is unprecedented in its safety, efficacy, and doing what it's supposed to do?
You make some very good points. And honestly, the argument that people have been making that, oh, there hasn't been enough time for this vaccine to have, been developed. It was developed too quickly. It was rushed. I think there's a major flaw in that argument. And while it is a valid concern, I think the big reason is we haven't seen a pandemic since that 1919 Spanish influenza. And back then, obviously, vaccines weren't around, and they weren't able to rush anything like that. And since that time, while there have been vaccination efforts, and it's been over the course of decades sometimes where a certain vaccine to a specific virus or bacteria was made, it hasn't been a pandemic situation. So currently, we faced another pandemic. We've had all that technology there, and money is a big factor on top of it. So when the whole world, I know people were doing research in other fields, everyone was doing in the healthcare industry, everyone was working on different things. But when the whole world was affected by this pandemic, everyone gathered together to work on this one vaccine, and every single country was pouring billions of dollars of research into this particular virus. So I feel that that concern that people have, although it is valid, the amount of effort and research that has been put in, we've broken pretty much every single record for speed, efficiency, and the tests. So far, the clinical trials for this vaccine have been very, very thorough, and I think it shows that if we all put our time and energy into one particular pathogen, it can make a difference.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple points here, and I agree both with Dr. Mumtaz and Moeen. I just wanted to include the fact that we still don't completely understand this virus. There are still many things that we're learning about it day in, day out. So the fact that people are worried about a vaccine while there's a virus going on that holds quite a bit of threat in and of itself, I think is important to mention here. And number two, if you're not taking the vaccine, then I hope you're ready to take proper measures. I mean, wearing masks and social distancing isn't going anywhere, even for those that have gotten the vaccine. But it's extra important that you do so that you don't contract the virus. Because from what we've seen, this virus is quite dangerous.
And the next point I wanted to bring up, and Waleed can add into this due to his experience, the people that believe that they can make a so-called live inoculation and just tank the virus, like, oh, I'm going to try to get infected so I can get paid from work. I'll be fine. I'll tank it in there. You guys can say some of the studies I've been reading are crazy about the after effects, but, Waleed, you can even talk about having it. How did it feel to have it, going through like everything?
Yeah, so I actually just had COVID. I actually still kind of have it. I think I'm on day 12 or 13 out of 14 days. So I've had it, and I haven't experienced severe symptoms, but some of my family members have. I believe like oxygen levels get really low. I believe mine hit around 92 to like 93 from a typical 99 to 100. So that was kind of concerning, and there was a lot of pressure in the chest. So there's a pressure in the chest. I was coughing. I started to lose my voice, and I was honestly like unable to leave my bed for some days because the pain was just so significant, and in the chest area. So for those people that think they can just tank the virus, I strongly suggest trying to avoid the virus at all costs. It's not fun at all.
Waleed, a quick question for you. What number would you give in a scale of 1 to 10 compared to your other flus or colds or similar illnesses?
Yeah, so I'm actually also asthmatic, so that also played alongside my my COVID. I would give it maybe like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in pain. The chest was just very uncomfortable, and it felt like someone was just standing on my chest for like some days, and it was pretty difficult to breathe.
Yeah, so I mean, when we say mild disease, most people think, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a little headache and a couple of bouts of cough, and I'm gonna be okay in a couple of days. And this is just not one of those things. And there's increasing amount of evidence that what people call asymptomatic disease actually is almost non-existent. And most people end up getting some symptoms. And what we call mild disease, it will probably be the worst flu or cold of your life. And people who have moderate disease will end up in the hospital, needing a little bit of oxygen, perhaps some treatment. And let's not talk about the severe disease, because that's a whole different animal.
And I think also a key reason why you wouldn't want to get it, we don't have the knowledge of what the long-term impact of getting it will be. And I know some studies have been saying, oh, it may affect fertility rates, it may do this, it may do that. And that is something that's going to be 5, 10, maybe even 15 years down the road, but we'll figure out what the long-term impact of the illness is. So even if someone says, oh, it was mild, it was just a cold or flu, some people are saying, yeah, that may even be that now, but we don't know what will happen 5 or 10 years down the road to your body and what the final impact of this disease would be on your body.
And, I think it's important to also add this point that there are also a lot of other illnesses, especially in the youth, that aren't diagnosed yet. So when someone gets COVID and they have a pre-existing condition, it could end up very bad for them. And there have been cases like that before, where a person had some type of immunocompromised, they were immunocompromised and they didn't know, and they ended up contracting the virus, and it ended up being far worse for them. So I think it's important that, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting those people around you when you're taking these health measures.
I just want to quickly add that to some of my patients that ended up having some permanent lung damage, which is very, very common, to be honest with you, for patients undergoing phase 3 COVID. I just simply told them, look, are you a smoker? And they said, no, I'm not a smoker. And said, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you accumulated about 20 years worth of smoking of lung damage to your lungs. And how sad that is, that you've never smoked, but you've accumulated that much of lung damage permanently. And some people have developed heart symptoms that are going to be chronic and going to go away. So structural change in the heart.
So, going towards concluding our podcast, I want to leave one last message. Weather is getting nicer for Northeast, colder parts of the U.S. Weather's getting nicer. You're going to want to go outside, go get food with your friends and stuff, which is fine. Go ahead, but take those precautions of social distancing, masking up, washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, and all these great things that people have said, experts have said. So any other information people need, I would suggest going to the CDC. They have all that stuff up there, answering all typical questions and stuff like that. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for Abraham, Moeen, Waleed, and Dr. Mumtaz taking their time out of their busy schedule. I greatly appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for
Take
having
care,
me.
guys.
Yep.